welcome. It is our monthly Q&A time. It's our first Q&A of the year. I hope you are having a great start to the year. And everybody is kind of easing back into things with everything kind of getting crazy over Christmas and the new year. And now I hope everybody's just kind of smoothing back into getting back into your rhythm of sleep. I will be talking a little bit about how kind of sleep all kind of changes when we are just kind of dealing with everything kind of getting a bit wonky and trying to get back on track. And then when that doesn't work, what we can do about it. So I'll just get started. I've got a couple of questions that came in, which were really good. So I want to get into those. So my name is Rebecca Mickey. I am a children's sleep consultant and author. And I work with families who have children under 6 years old. But the majority of families that I work with have children who are under 4 years old. With the average really being, and it goes kind of in swings and roundabouts, average is normally kind of around a year. I am a gentle, no-cry sleep consultant, so I'm not advising families to leave their children to cry it out. We use much more hands-on, gentle techniques to work on sleep. And if we can actually avoid doing any sleep training whatsoever, then I will. I like to try to kind of do all the other stuff and get better sleep and without having to do any of that sleep training. So if you have any sleepy questions, you can always pop those down here in the comments and I will get those answered for you. I'll just dive in and talk a little bit about sleep and how when we go through big change, teething or illness or holidays or something big happening, where sleep gets wonky. So, as it does when your child is unwell or they are teething or you're moving house or you're suddenly home because it's Christmas and the New Year. And then and then you're trying to get back on track. You know everything's going to get wonky when this big thing is happening. And then you're out of the big thing. Your child's feeling better. That tooth has come through. We're now into the new year and we're trying to get back on track. And we're trying to get back on track, but we can't. We get stuck. And you make some progress and you can see, okay, now I can see that we're beginning to get there, but you don't actually completely get back on track. It's really, really frustrating because you're doing everything right, but it doesn't quite hit. It doesn't quite get there. And there's actually a reason for this. It's nothing that you're doing wrong. There is actually a reason for this. This happens when, obviously sleep changes and evolves as your child grows, as they get older. And this will happen, you can't get back on track, when there's a shift that needs to happen. So as your child grows and they develop, their sleep needs change. We know that their sleep needs change. And it's just sort of going along at this pace and it's sort of like developing. But then when we have this big thing happen, then we're trying to then get back on track and we can't because we're trying to get back to what we were before. So we're looking at our daytime routines, our nighttime routines, what our nighttime was like before. But in fact, we need to change things up. This change was going to happen anyway. It was just a developmental change that was going to happen. But our big thing that happened and made sleep really wonky just sped up this change. So most of the time when we're looking at trying to get back on track, and if you ever feel that you've got stuck when you're trying to get back on track, look at your daytime. 9 times out of 10, I will suggest looking at your daytime because oftentimes it's this little tweak to your daytime that is going to help you get back on track. So it could be you need to make your awake periods a little bit longer. It could be that your child is getting ready to drop a nap. It could be that they're ready to drop all of their naps. But take a look at your daytime and that will 9 times out of 10 get your nighttime back on track. A lot of the times we think that when we're dealing with a nighttime issue that we have to fix nighttime. It's something that we need to do at nighttime, but actually it's not. most of the time it's actually looking at our daytime, seeing what tweaks, changes that we need to make there to help us get back on track at nighttime. So depending on how old your child is, depends on what that's going to look like. So that could be moving from 2 to 1 naps. Oftentimes it's lengthening out awake periods a little bit. So we'll often see this, especially with children who are under a year. This we really see. Well, we see it with all ages, but we really see it with children who are under a year, lengthening out your awake periods a little bit. As you lengthen out your awake periods, you want to make sure that you are relaxing your child before you're going to get them down for their nap, because we're keeping them up for longer. And even though they may be ready for it, there's a possibility they're going to get overstimulated because of that. So keep any additional awake period fairly calm and relaxed. And walking wind down. If you don't know about a walking wind down is a very helpful tool for you to use before you begin your nighttime routine. You can just use it during your daytime as well if you have a child who has a more intense sleep personality. Just be working on relaxing their brain just a little bit. Scoop your child up a few minutes before you're going to begin your nap time routine, or just when you feel that they're getting overly stimulated, that 1,000-yard stare, that blank stare. That's your child's brain getting overly stimulated. If you see that, or before you're going to begin a nap time routine, when you think that your child is kind of overtired, overstimulated, and walk around with them. It's a slow, rhythmic walk. Look at pictures on the walls, look out the windows, and you're just going to do your sort of a long walk to where you're going to get them down to sleep, to the bedroom. So you're just going to do a long walk around the house. It could take just a couple of minutes, anything up to 10 minutes. This will help bring your child's that level of stimulation down a little bit, and it's going to make sleep so much easier. It's great because your child is physically still. So if your child is kind of constantly on the go, this is really helpful because your child is now physically still, but you're keeping things moving. There's things to look at. And so that's going to make it that it's going to be relaxing for them. Start straight with your nighttime routine. And this will help with any additional longer wake period, making sure that you're going to actually get a better nap. And you're not then dealing with just overstimulation, which will be a 20-minute nap. And then work on this for doing the same thing 3 or 4 days, and then see, are you beginning to see improvement with your nighttime? If you are, great. You can stay where you are. It's worth having a little pause just to see, because you work on your day. Your nighttime takes a little bit of time to catch up, and then you want to see, and it doesn't happen instantly. It takes a little bit of time. So then you want to see what it is that your night does, and then do I need to continue to tweak my daytime again? So it's kind of like a stop, start, because if you try and do too much too soon, it just can get really overwhelming, in that you are, you just do too much. You're just pushing things too long, because if you're waiting for that instant, the instant doesn't work. And then you've got too few naps, and then you're back at crap sleep again, which is not what we want. We want better sleep. So stop, start. I always like to make some changes, see what impact that has, and then continue to do so. See what impact that has, and then continue to do so. Meaning it's not a quick fix, but hey, it gets you results as quickly as possible without overwhelming you or your child, and without you having to backtrack. Nothing worse than backtracking when it comes to sleep. If you have any questions, you can always pop those down into the comments here. I do have a couple that came in, which I thought were really great questions. So I'm going to be answering those. I have a giant bucket of coffee here. I'm still a little bit jet lagged. I was in England for a couple of weeks. I actually got back a week ago, but this jet lag has knocked me out big time. So copious amounts of coffee in the morning. So I have a question came in from Amy. Any advice on a sleep regression in a 10-month-old, as well as split nights? Interesting. He wakes at 1 and thinks it's time to start the day. It takes 2 hours to get him back to sleep. He had a 7-week-long sleep regression in December, and then slept great for 2 weeks And now back to awful. It feels like another sleep regression, but I don't know why we have another one so soon. Any advice much appreciated. This is such a great question because it's a lot, covers a lot. So I'll start talking a little bit about sleep regressions. I've actually just recorded a mini masterclass on sleep regressions, the different types of sleep regressions. Because there are two different types of sleep regressions. And figuring out what's going on can help you figure out how to get out of your sleep regression. Sleep regressions happen for every single child out there. They're not avoidable. Your child is going to go through sleep regressions. There's two different types. And there's the one you probably know about, which is as your child is going through a developmental leap. When they have a big period of learning, then sleep gets wonky. You'll be able to see this when your child's rolling or they're beginning to crawl or they're beginning to walk, because they just do this all the darn time. This is how children, they develop things so quickly because they just don't stop at all. I mean, you can imagine as adults, if we continue to learn at that pace, it'd be great, but we don't. But children do. And they just try and they perfect these skills really quickly. When you think about how much your child learns, even in the first year, think about the first 3 years from where they were born as just an infant who can do really nothing. They can eat and they can poop, and they're good at both of those things. But they can't do anything. And then at 3 years old, everything that they can do, they just don't stop talking and they just don't stop moving and everything. And just it's just huge, the amount of growth that happens. And when your child goes through a period of big growth where they're really working on perfecting things, that will make sleep go wonky. You'll see this at nighttime. Your child's learning to roll over, you'll see this happen at nighttime. And they'll do this everywhere. They don't just do it at night. You'll see them do this absolutely everywhere. So they're rolling when you're trying to get them in the car seat, when you're trying to change their diaper, when you're trying to, whatever, everywhere. They're rolling. And they will do the same at nighttime. Because they need to perfect this skill everywhere. Then they've got it. They've perfected it. They don't need to be practicing it all the time. They now have it. They can do it whenever they want to do it. But whilst they're working on perfecting it, it's all the darn time. So you will see this, and this is the same for crawling, walking, language development. So you will hear your child chatting away when they're in bed. Cognitive brain development is a little bit harder to tell because there's not really much happening. Your child can just be awake at that point. But these are the regressions that we know about when your child is learning something. So if you're seeing that, you think, is my child going through a regression? Are they learning new skills? What new skills are they learning? So that's one type. The other type of sleep regression is when something big is happening in their life. So this could be moving house, or starting daycare, or a nanny coming to stay to work, or grandma coming to stay, or you going to grandma's. Just something big, which is a change from the normal. That can also start off a sleep regression. And this is, we'll often see this, not necessarily as big. It depends on what's happening in your child's life, but sleep will get wonky when your child's life is disrupted, where things are not as they normally are. Sleep will get wonky. So, look, if you think we're going through a sleep regression, what's happening? A lot of times we'll see this when a parent goes back to work. So maybe your child is now at daycare or they're with a nanny, that we'll see this regression. And we'll see this a lot of time because when your child has spent so much time with you all day, every day, and now they're not doing that, then there's a huge, big disruption to their life. And even though they're feeding and they're doing all of these things, they still got the time with you, it's just a big disruption. It takes a little time for them to get used to that. So sleep will be disrupted. And this is, honestly, that is not the perfect time for sleep to get disrupted when you're going back to work. I think we can all agree that's when you need the sleep. but it's really, really normal. So some things that you can do if that's the case, for example, you're not able to spend as much time with your child as you were, really make every second count. So really good quality time with your child, and think about filling up their touch tank. That's kind of how I think of it. In that all the time, just think of all the times during the day that you have been with your child, feeding them, picking them up, moving around, playing with them, all of these things, and just all that kind of touch that you were doing. It's filling up their touch tank. And then at the end of the day, when their touch tank is full, then they can sleep well. When the touch tank is full, they can sleep well. And then, so if you're not able to fill up that touch tank so much during the day, they still need that touch tank full. So they're going to wake up during the night to do that, just to hang out. So let's see if we can fill up that touch tank during the day still, but it's going to look really different than it did beforehand, because before you had kind of all day, and beforehand their touch tank was overflowing. So it's not as if you're trying to squeeze in 8 hours of touch into 2 hours, 3 hours, 4 hours, whatever. You're not trying to do that. But you want to have really good quality time where you are touching your child. So that's feeding, definitely. If you're feeding your child, getting as much skin to skin as you possibly can. If you are sat with your child and you are playing with them, sit them on your lap, filling up that touch tank. If you are just doing some laundry, something like that, wearing them in a carrier, because then again, you are filling up their touch tank. So think of ways that you can do that. That is probably going to help you get out of that regression a little bit quicker. Again, regressions are not, we can't avoid them. Every single child is going to go through them because we have different reasons for them. Your child is developing, things are going to change. Things are never ever the same. So these are the reasons why. So let's see, if you know why your child's going through the regression, one, I just think it's easier to manage if you know the reason why, rather than sleep has just gone really, really crazy and not, like, oh crap, sleep's gone bad. What do I do? If you can, okay, why is sleep gone bad? Oh, because of this happened. That just makes it a little bit easier for you if you kind of like understanding why. So have a look at reasons why you think you're going through a regression. So Amy was going through a 7-week-long sleep regression. Exhausting. So 10-month-old. So the developmental regressions are at around 4 months old, which is a bit of a doozy, that one. It's a continuation of a change that happens at around from about 12 weeks. It's a continuation of that, and sleep never gets back. So it's not so much of a regression as a progression. That's what all regressions are, really, progressions, because you're not going to get back to where you were. So we have the 4 month. There is a 6-month sleep regression. You probably won't notice that too much because you're still recovering from your 4 month, but it happens. And then there's the 9-month sleep regression. And this one is the mother of all sleep regressions. There's a lot going on developmentally at this point. And this regression can last months. I always hate having to say that. This regression can last a really long time, unfortunately. I'm sorry. Just because there's so much going on. There's also then a 12-month sleep regression. Again, you're probably not going to realize that you're in a sleep regression because nothing is as awful as the 9-month sleep regression. Then we have an 18-month sleep regression and a 24-month sleep regression. Those ones are completely different kettle of fish because we're now dealing with incredibly opinionated toddlers. So it's quite different, obviously, than the 9-month sleep regression with a 9-month-old and a 2-year-old. Very different opinions on things. And so they're just really different. Now, some people say that there is a 4-year sleep regression. That sleep is just, sleep is never going to stay the same and it is forever going to get wonky for whatever reason. So just constantly expect change. It's going to happen. So Amy has a 10-month-old who went through a 7-week-long sleep regression. Now, that could have been, I'm not sure what was going on in Amy's life, but that could have been the 9-month sleep regression. A little bit early there, obviously. It could have been the 6-month sleep regression. It could have been because we were getting through Christmas and the whole, from Thanksgiving on, if you're in the US, is just kind of crazy. We sort of have this gearing up to Thanksgiving. If you're in the US, you know this. If you're not, you may not be aware of this. We have this kind of gearing up to Thanksgiving because we have then Halloween, and then we have this big gearing up to Thanksgiving, which is a huge, huge holiday here. Then, day after Thanksgiving, so the Friday, the Black Friday, we are shopping because of Black Friday sales. 2, we are now 100% into Christmas. It starts the day after Thanksgiving, which is the last weekend, the last Thursday in November is Thanksgiving. And we are full on into it. And it is busy. It's just full on. And so this is a big change happening because we're visiting people. People are coming to us. We're going and doing all these things that we don't normally do. Boom, sleep regression. If we're going to be pairing that with a developmental one as well, that could be a challenge. So I'm not sure why Amy's little one was going through that sleep regression then, if it even was a sleep regression. 7 weeks is kind of long, but for the 9-month sleep regression, not so much, but you weren't 9 months when going through that one. So I'm not sure. But I'm wondering if it's more what you mentioned as well, the split nights. And I'm wondering if that, because a sleep regression will often look like big, long awake periods during the night where nothing seems to be wrong, which is a split night because your child's just awake. Nothing, it's not as if they're in pain. And you can tell that they're really in pain. And so you can tell what's going on, or they're throwing up and they're just, okay, that's why they're awake. A split night or a regression is big, long awake period during the night when nothing seems to be wrong. So I'm wondering if this could have been more of a split night or a regression because they kind of look the same. Big, long awake period where nothing seems to be wrong. So what can we do about a split night? So look and see, Amy, are you dealing with big things happening in your child's life, big developmental stage? I wouldn't have I'm sure those things have happened, but the fact that we're still struggling after getting 2 glorious weeks and now things have gone kind of wonky again, I think that we're dealing more with a split night necessarily than the regression. But it could be you were dealing with a split night, fix that, and now we're dealing with a regression. Let's just presume we're dealing with a split night because I think that this will help you get back on track. So a split night, if you don't know what a split night is, it's actually how we historically used to sleep. This is something that we did many years ago. We would have a split night because before electricity, we would go to bed much earlier than we do now. Much earlier. Because if it would just cost a lot in candles and oil and all of those things. So we wouldn't necessarily be staying awake really late. We'd go to bed after it got dark, fairly soon after it got dark. And we'd then sleep for a few hours, 4 hours maybe, and then we'd wake up and then we'd have a couple of hours of awake time during the night. And this would be sort of a whole family affair. Everybody would get up and we'd have this awake time during the night. This is time for, family time, game night kind of thing, where you just hang out. And you'd have this awake period, and then you go back to sleep until morning time. So we were getting enough sleep because we were going to bed so much earlier than we do now. And we were getting enough sleep, so the split night. So it's actually really a lot of children will go through split night. It's actually quite a natural way to sleep. It's trying to sleep for the entire night without waking up. We're all sort of trying to not wake up is something that humans don't really do that. We don't necessarily sleep for the entire night. Historically, we've had the split night. But we can do some things about it. But knowing sort of the history of it, I think is kind of helpful to look at this. And you may notice as adults that this is something that you've done as well before, gone through periods of this. So if you can, go to bed early so that you're getting enough sleep and you can have that time. But that's obviously not always possible for a whole multitude of reasons, and that's all okay. Let's see if we can get rid of that split night. So what happens when we're awake, we build up a sleep pressure. So where we get more and more tired, and then we can sleep. If you try to go to bed before you're tired, you're not going to get that great sleep, are you? So, whether that's a nap or nighttime, you're not going to get the best sleep because you're not that tired. So if you wake up in the morning and you're trying to get down for a nap within the first hour, you may be able to fall asleep, but you're not going to necessarily nap for a really long time. And that's the same for your child. If they've woken up in the morning, you're trying to get them down too soon for their nap, they don't have enough sleep pressure to get a good nap. They may still be able to fall asleep, but it'll be very kind of light sleep, very restless sleep, and they'll wake up shortly after. There's not much of a sleep pressure, not so tired, not feeling so tired. And so when a child is getting split nights, or a child is kind of getting a short night and more during the day, they're getting enough sleep per 24 hours. They are getting enough sleep, and they are completely fine because they have that opportunity to nap. We as adults don't unnecessarily get that opportunity to nap during the day, which is a bit sad. But if we can create more of a sleep pressure, we'll need more sleep at nighttime, or, again, at nap time, if we create more of a sleep pressure. So if we're trying to fix a split night, we want to make sure that there is more of a sleep pressure at the beginning of the night. So that's probably going to look like going to bed a little bit later. Now, it does get a little bit tricky with naps and things here. So because Amy has a 10-month-old, so we want to be on 2 naps. Maximum between the 2 naps would be 3 hours, maximum. But you want to see how much it is that your child needs. Every child is completely unique, and they have their own sleep need during the day. They'll have their own sleep need per 24 hours. And we want to we want the bulk of that to be at nighttime, just enough during the day, but we don't want them to be cranky and too much of that sleep pressure, just too tired, because life is difficult when we're tired. I think that's something we can all agree on. Life is tough when we're tired, and that's the same for your child. So we want to try, if possible, to avoid that. So you want to go to bed a little bit, get your child down to bed a little bit later. You can try even 15 minutes later. Now, don't feel because your child is awake 2 hours during the night that you need to keep them up 2 hours later. That's not how the sleep math works. It's kind of complex and a little bit magical. So it could just be keeping your child up 30 minutes later, getting them up a little bit earlier in the morning condenses your nighttime. So you see, if you've got your child is asleep for this amount of hours, 10 hours during the night, but they're in bed for 12 hours and they have 2 hours of wake during the night, but they only need 10 hours. Okay, either we can tweak that a little bit by going down to bed a little bit later, getting up a little bit earlier. We're condensing that night a little bit more. And then there's more of a pressure to sleep at night. You want to make sure, if you are doing this, that you don't just let them then add that missed nighttime sleep onto the nap, because then we're just continuing to shift sleep around. So you want to be writing down how much your child is sleeping and when, so that you can make sure that they're not catching up on this. If you're going down to bed later, getting up a little bit earlier, we're creating more of a sleep pressure, but they're not just making up for that in their nap time and just adding on that, an hour extra nap, because they're not going to then need it during the night. They just got it during the day. They were lucky enough to get it during the day. So we want to make sure that you are not letting them catch up on that, keeping your naps consistent, but starting your day a little bit earlier. So you could just start from one morning, just getting your child up a little bit earlier, and keeping your nap timings the same, and then going down for bed at night a little bit later. Now we're keeping your child up a little bit longer. We want to make sure there's that walk-in wind down that will be really helpful, because then we're avoiding overstimulation. We want your child to be tired, yep, but we don't want them to be overly stimulated, because that one can result in a 20-minute nap, or that can also result in just a more disturbed night. And when we're trying to fix nights, we want to make sure that we're not creating other things that are going to be disturbing the night, because then we don't know what to work on. It can feel really, really challenging if that's the case. Gosh, that was a lot of talking for Amy's question, but I think that hopefully that will answer Amy's question for how she needs to get back on track, how she can fix this, because there's a lot. Regressions, a whole one thing. Split nights, a whole another thing. Trying to figure out what on earth is going on is something else. If you do ever have any kind of where you're thinking, oh, sleep's getting really wonky now, and you're feeling that you're getting to the point where you need to make some changes, one thing that you can do, which is really, really helpful, is to keep a sleep diary. Now, I always have families, when I'm working privately with families, I will always have families keep a sleep diary, because it really helps me see exactly what's going on. And you can see patterns that you didn't actually know were there. So it is worth keeping a sleep diary. Sleep diary, I ask for a little bit more information and probably you would need to keep, but you want to know time that your child went down for their nap and how long it took them more or less to fall asleep. Because if they went down for their nap at 9, but you'd been trying since 8, you want to kind of note that down. They go down at 9, and then what time do they wake up? Do you need to help them back down to sleep? You could even put then kind of what kind of mood they're in when they wake up. Do this for naps, and then timing for nighttime. So time that you started getting ready. The info I want is time started getting ready for bed, then sort of timing that working on sleep, and then time of sleep. So this is really, really helpful for seeing then if your timings are good, because if your child's always struggling to fall asleep after this amount of hours, then you may be able to see where you need to tweak and change that. And then timings for nighttime wake-ups as well. Now, I know that this is awful. Having to repeatedly look at the clock during the night is really not a pleasant thing to do. I totally get it, especially, fair enough, if you're up once a night. Why are you keeping a sleep diary though if you're up once a night? Nobody's doing that. But because you're up a lot of times a night, and that is then when you're having to repeatedly look at the clock. But if you are keeping that sleep diary at nighttime, it can be so helpful for seeing if you need to tweak things during the day and whether we can see any habitual night wake-ups happening. So habitual night wake-ups are wake-ups that happen out of habit. It says it all in the name. But the habit can be because of going, either exactly the same time or a certain amount of time after falling asleep. So 3 hours after falling asleep. Now, because your child is not going to fall asleep at the exact same time every single night, there's going to be a little bit of wiggle room where that timing happens. But if you keep the sleep diary, you may be able to see that. You may be able to see that after the first wake up, some nights that might be at 9 p.m, other nights that might be at 11. But after the first wake up, you can guarantee that your child will wake up 3 hours, 2 hours, whatever, after that first wake up. That's then happening out of habit. So you can see then when habitual wake-ups are happening rather than those random wake-ups. And oftentimes we will be able to see a pattern by keeping this sleep diary. So keep the timings during the day, then you can see, okay, we're always struggling to get down for that first nap. They're always now falling, I've been trying since 8, but they always now fall asleep at about 9. Aim for a 9 o'clock nap. Just aim for that 9 o'clock nap, and your chances are 9 o'clock is that time they're ready to be asleep. You could even aim for an 8:30 nap just to see, because a lot of times when children kind of get into that fight mode with sleep, that they're just fighting it, and then they've sort of like forgotten what they're fighting about. So if they're not tired enough, they're just like, okay, I'm not tired. What are we doing? Why are you trying to do this? I'm not tired. And they just start fighting it. Now, if the perfect time for their nap was 8:30, but they're in fight mode. They've just gone beyond that. And then maybe when they're really exhausted, 9 o'clock, then that they fall asleep. So if you are wanting to lengthen out your awake periods a little bit, just start small, 15, 20 minutes, and then you can always increase it and just see, does that help? Because if you're getting them when they're more sleepy, they're more likely to fall asleep than if you are getting them when they're just not quite there. They won't just then go, oh, now's the perfect time, boom, and get to sleep. They're just kind of like fussy and mad and all of that. So trying to just sort of slowly work towards that, because it could be that your 8:30 is a better timing. When you've then had less of a fight getting your child down for their nap, we've built up more of that sleep pressure, their naps may be a little bit better, which is going to have a positive impact on your nighttime sleep as well. Daytime is always something that I'll work on first, making sure our timings are really good, trying to lengthen out naps as best as possible, because we can as much as half nighttime wake-ups by just working on our daytime. So that's easy to do. Working on your daytime is easy to do. It's so much easier to do than having to deal with middle of the night stuff when you've been rudely awoken. It's so much easier to do. And then sort of, work on these daytimes, see then what impact that has on your nighttime, because nighttime may be that you no longer have your split nights, that you've reduced down a wake up. And the way that you kind of reduce down wake ups, it's not just completely avoiding a wake up. So it won't be that your child completely skips the 2 a.m. wake up or something like that. What will happen is the time between wake ups will get bigger. So that's how we are dropping wake ups. They're kind of getting pushed into morning time when we're dropping wake ups. So that's how we see that happen, is your child will, rather than waking at 9, 1 and 4, they now be maybe waking at 10, at 2:30 and 6. So 6 o'clock then maybe kind of our morning time. So we've kind of got rid of that, one of those wake ups, but we've not really sort of ditched. It's not like ditching the middle of the night wake up. It just feels a bit different. But that's often how we'll see wake ups reduced down, is by the wake ups, the sleep periods lengthening out. So that is how we'll notice our nighttime. Our nighttimes change a little bit. So, okay, I need to have a big sip of coffee now, because I'm just getting a bit parched after talking a lot. So keeping a sleep diary is honestly can be really, really huge, really, really helpful. So if you are looking to make some changes with your sleep in the future, then do so. Keep that sleep diary, and then take a look, and you may need to look at multiple weeks of it. And there's different sleep diaries that you can keep. I like to initially I'll look at just look at timings, and then I have a spreadsheet that I like to plot things out on, because that then will help you see whether there's always a wake up happening at around a certain time. And you can then see sort of like, oh, look, when the nap was like this was then, and it's just a little bit easier to see. But if you're really looking for, looking to see if there are habits, things happening, you're going to need at least a week, maybe even 2 weeks, to really help you sort of figure out exactly what it is, that if there's any tweaks, changes that you need to make. But it's a really helpful thing to keep, because it's it can show so much information if you kind of know what you're looking for. That's another thing. So what do you want to look for? You want to look for wake ups happening at around the same time each night, or a certain amount of hours after certain duration of time. That's what you definitely want to look for, that, especially in the earlier part of the night. Later part of the night, things can kind of get wonky. We don't get into a deep sleep after 4 a.m, so things can kind of get wonky. So I wouldn't necessarily look at that part, because wake ups are going to happen much more often. Earlier part of the night is something that's definitely worth looking at. And then naps, nap duration and time to fall asleep as well. They will help you identify if there's any tweaks, changes that you need to make. I always wish, whenever I speak to somebody and they'll we're talking about all the things, they're telling me about their sleep issues and things that their child is doing. They're sleeping this way, they're doing this and doing this. And I said, I wish there was just one thing that I could say that could kind of fix it all. But then there's not. There's not just one thing. I really wish there was. But there's a lot of things that you need to be looking at making change to improving sleep. And that's why it feels overwhelming. Because when you think about how much your child sleeps all night, hopefully, the entire night, a lot of times we'll aim for a 12-hour night, which is a little bit excessive. Most children are getting like somewhere about between a 10, 11-hour night. But still, that's a lot of hours. And then we're dealing with naps during the day where, that could be 4 hours, 5 hours, 3 hours nap. So that's still the majority of our 24-hour day is kind of, for a child, is sleep related. If your child is still napping, the majority of the day is sleep. And then if you think, I need to fix sleep because something's wrong with sleep, I need to fix it. It's so overwhelming because you've got to fix your nap time. How do I know I'm getting my child down at the right time? How am I getting them how am I going to get them nice and relaxed? How am I going to help them to sleep? How am I going to make sure we're getting a long enough nap? How am I then going to make sure that the time between the naps is good? And then the same for the next nap, the same for the next nap. And then we got all night to deal with. So that's that whole getting your child nice and unwound, making sure that the timing is really good, falling asleep there. We've also got feeds then. We don't want them waking up hungry. So we've got to throw a few feeds in there as well before nap time. But oh no, we don't want them falling asleep when they're feeding. But have you tried keeping a child awake when they're feeding at the end of the day? And we've got lots of that sleep pressure. It's virtually impossible to do. And then we have wake ups. You may have a wake up that happens within the first hour. Quick, urgent wake up, and you need to be there helping quickly. And then you've got all of your night wake ups. You've got feeds that are happening there. You've maybe got a split night. You've maybe got a regression. You maybe got to do a diaper change in there. And there's all of these things. And this is for 12 hours at night that you've got to do. And it feels so overwhelming because what do I do? Where do I start? What can I actually do? Because I have to fix more than half of my day. This is what I need to work on more than half of my day. And it just feels overwhelming. And it just feels that what can I do? And I totally get that. So I like to teeny tiny steps. A step in the right direction is still a step in the right direction. Okay. Some people like to leap in the, big giant leaps. And so the steps are much bigger, much more significant, but you need to take less of them to get to your goal. I like to do the tiny steps. So think of your child's sleep as a puzzle. Okay, so you could have a puzzle that has just 4 pieces, and you've got to get those 4 pieces in place. They're big pieces, so it's got a lot, each piece of the puzzle will have a lot on it because it's a big piece. So the piece of the puzzle could have daytime schedule, your naps, winding down, feeds during the day, all of that. So that could be one piece. There is one giant piece of the puzzle is kind of daytimes and feeds. Another piece of that puzzle could be getting ready for bed at nighttime. Another piece could be falling asleep. Another piece could be during the night. 4 pieces. You get all of those things into place. Boom, we're good. We're getting great sleep. And so some people can totally do it. Some children can totally handle that. Oftentimes when you're looking at bigger pieces of the puzzle, they're bigger steps. And so they are, because there's so many things that your child needs to be doing and you need to be doing, it can feel overwhelming. And a lot of times that then comes with kind of crying out. Because one of those pieces of your 4-piece puzzle is falling asleep independently, how are we going to do that? That's what that looks like. And oftentimes that is with cried out. You could then so that's a 4-piece puzzle, which is your child's sleep. Get those 4 pieces in place and you're good. The pieces are big. You've got to work on each of those pieces, big pieces. Or you could have a slightly the same, the goal is the same, but you got more pieces to your puzzle. Or you could make it into a 100-piece puzzle. The goal is the same, but each then piece that you've got to get into place is much easier to do because it's much smaller to do. So it's like, okay, let's get the outsides first and the corners. So the corners are like our daytime routine, nap time routine. So those are the edges. Is the foundation of the edges there. They're easy to do because each little thing. Okay, nap time routine, great, check. Excellent, I've got that piece there. And now I'm going to work on the next piece, which is, and you can maybe be able to work on 3 or 4 pieces at a time, which is great. But you want to then, you've got these little, these little steps, and you get them into place and you can do it. And it feels much more manageable, even though a lot of times bigger, more pieces of a puzzle feels trickier than just 4 pieces. When you look at what each piece is, what's going to be more manageable? Yeah, I can do my nap time routine. Boom, done. I can work on my nighttime routine. Done. It can be much easier to do because your goal is the same. Sleep, more independent sleep. That's the same, but it's going to be more, I think it's just more manageable with tiny little steps. It's not overwhelming then because you can always work on a little part. And then when you've got that down, boom, move on to the next part. When you got that bit in, move on to the next part. Much easier to do. So don't ever feel overwhelmed by sleep, because it totally can. I get it. So keeping a sleep diary is a great way to start, just for you to help you identify what it is that you need to work on. Okay, we need to work on the timing of our naps because I see this just isn't working. So you can work on that piece of the puzzle. Timing your naps. Okay, this has made naps so much easier to do that if you want to continue, that could have been just what you needed to do. You just had a nap puzzle. Boom, you did it. But it may be then you do want to work on your nights. You can totally do that as well. So working on these little pieces of the puzzle gets you your goal, but those steps are so much more manageable and easier to do. They are easier to do. And I think parenting is hard enough. I think we can, it's not easy. So let's make sleep as easy as possible. But that doesn't mean that it is quick, because it's going to take you longer to do a 100-piece puzzle than it is a 4-piece puzzle. So it's not necessarily quick, but it's easier for you and it's easier for your child. And as I say, parenting's hard enough. Let's not make sleep any trickier than it needs to be. Let's try and make this as easy as possible. So slow and steady wins the sleep race. Definitely teeny tiny little steps. We're not leaping forward. We're more of a little bit of a shuffle. That's going to get us the results. Just sort of like shuffling along is all good. The goal is the same. The results are the same, but it's easier to shuffle than it is to be leaping forward. To remind yourself of that as you're working on your child's sleep. Okay, good stuff. Right. Well, I have talked so much. I'm now definitely I'm going to make a cup of tea, I think I'm going to have a cup of tea. That will help. Because coffee is just not helping my throat right now. So I'm going to have a nice cup of tea. So thank you for joining me. I will be back next month. So you will find me here the last Tuesday of the month. Each month. When is the next last Tuesday of the month? Let's have a little look. Let's see if we can find out. Again, that's the last day of the month. So in exactly 4 weeks, on the 28th of February, you will find me here on the Facebook page. I will also then get this on YouTube and on my website so that you can come back to it if you need to. But I will be here again next month. Slumber Academy members have a weekly Q&A, and that happens actually on our website, Slumber Academy website. And this is a time for me to help members develop a plan. And then we can kind of be checking in each week and moving forward as they're working through that plan, letting them know what they need to be working on and when, look at those little steps, which steps they need to be working on over the week. So if you do have looking for more support, check out Slumber Academy, slumberacademy.com. That's where you're going to find all of the information for gentle sleep training, and that's where we have our weekly live Q&As there, so that you can get all your questions answered as you're working on your child's sleep. I will be back next month, next Tuesday, all the other Tuesdays of the month. I have a mini masterclass. This next mini masterclass next week is a good one. It's if you have a newborn, someone who's got a newborn, this one is for you. It's what to try when you can't lay your newborn down in the bassinet. Do you remember those days where you got your baby to sleep, but you can't actually lay them down because they wake up instantly? What to try. So that's the next Tuesday. So I'm not doing a Q&A. We've got a mini masterclass, so you can check out those either here on Facebook. I will post that. It's also going to be on my website and on YouTube, on my YouTube channel, so you can go check those out. Thank you so much for joining me. I will be back next month. I'll see you soon. Bye-bye.